Um, all right. Um, Hello, everybody. I hope this works. Give me just a hot second here to get started. Oh, nope, nope. All right. Nice to meet everyone again. I'm your teacher, Mitch Jones, in Chinese, Yu Mo Zhi. And you may notice that my face is more red than usual. And that is because I have a massive, horrible, incredible sunburn from just going out in the sun. There are a lot of people like me that just burn super easy. So I got my aloe vera, and I thought I'd take today to fantasize with you of a magical place far up north where the clouds are always there and it's always cold and you walk inside and there's just warm maple syrup. That's right, it's Canada. In fact, I call it Oh Canada. Um, for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you, the Canadian national anthem starts with "Oh Canada," and it goes on like that. It's a very simple song, but it's just a very happy song talking about these people coming together. And I thought I could talk to you guys about some history and some culture from Canada because I like it. I like it there. I got to visit last summer, and honestly, it's a great little country. I can't recommend it enough. So let's get started here. So here's a little history of Canada. So North and South America were conquered by the Europeans back as early as the 1500s to 1600s. Europe was discovered by a Viking man, so he's far northern European, named Leif Erikson, who did nothing with it. And then it was rediscovered by another guy named Christopher Columbus years later, and he told everyone, and they were like, "Ooh, we can take stuff." So the Europeans came and they took over everything because they saw it as an investment. They could make money off the Americas because it's hard to conquer Europe, or it was back then. Because if England fought France or France fought Spain, it'd be very expensive and they wouldn't get that much. But if you fight the like less, militarily advanced natives of North and South America, you have a huge advantage. Um, so originally, Canada became French. The French took over the far north. Mexico and South became kind of Spanish and Portuguese. That's why like Mexico speaks Spanish, Brazil speaks Portuguese, Chile speaks Spanish. A lot of these countries were taken over by these big nations. And then in the very middle was England, who started like Boston-ish area and kind of spread north and south from there to take over that central bit. So here's North America in like 1700, and we'll talk about why it looks like this in a bit. But in general, these are on the right here, those are English settlements, and those would continue to grow and expand. In the south are the Spanish ones. So you can see over there, Florida, which is now a part of the United States, was at one point a Spanish colony. And you can see the Spanish influence by the name even. Florida sounds like Spanish flores, flowers. And then all that green stuff is like for the French were kind of involved. And there's a reason they weren't super involved, and we'll get to that in just a second. Hey, it hurts to smile. Uh, so there was a point in history where Spain was the most powerful country in the world, and they were excited about it. They're like, yes, or see, we are the most powerful country in the world. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, they're the most powerful country in the world. Um, and they bought a fleet of 130 of these huge ships and called it the Spanish Armada. And their goal was to take over England and eventually the world, because England's this little island up north. It's very hard to take over. Um, The English just had these little tiny, like repurposed fishing boats, random small ships, and they were trying to defend. But what came out was like the weather was blowing south from England, so the Spanish, their sailboats didn't go very fast. There was some bad leadership. They gave it to people who were inexperienced to take over England, and in general, bad aim. Like there were these huge, amazing ships, which made them very easy to hit because boats all sink. A cannonball that hits a boat makes a boat sink. Like it's not, there's no amount of size that fixes that if it's all made out of wood, right? So the English were able to defeat the Spanish Armada, and they were claiming many of Spain's southern territories. And then England became this huge world power, this super incredibly powerful nation. Um, the English and French had been fighting, like going to war for years. And eventually in the colonies, they went to war through some territory disputes. Like France claimed a thing, but it was like close to England's things. So the English wanted it too. It was a whole thing. But the English won. Um, it made England very poor and helped train some American generals, including George Washington, who, if you were American, you'd be like, oh, I know that guy. He's on our money. He's the very first president of the US. I don't have a coin with his face on it right now, but he's on the quarters, like the 25-cent pieces that are a quarter of a US dollar. Those are George Washington. It also drove the French out of most of the Americas, which resulted in Canada, like at least northeastern Canada, becoming British, and the rest would follow. In 1776, and a little bit before that, the British started taxing the Americas to pay for this huge war. And the Americans were not interested in this. It caused a lot of rioting, and the British took that rioting as a sign that the English were, they were rebelling. They were horrible. Let's go and shut them up, shall we? So they sent these soldiers over, which resulted in a war for independence. But Canada didn't join. They were culturally different because they spoke French, and they were politically different. They were very loyal to the English crown. They didn't help the English. They were neutral the entire war. But America was all about independence. And because Canada was an English territory, to this day, and this is in US law somewhere deep, deep down, Canada is allowed to join America without a vote. They can just say, hey, we'd like to be Americans now. And the Americans will be like, oh my gosh, I love you, thank you, come in. Because of this time period. So throughout the late 1700s and early 1800s, many other countries, colonies in the Americas, France, the French people, there was a lot of rebellion in this time. Some big like names like Mexico, Brazil, all of South America was around this time, at least most of South America. But Canada never rebelled. They were always there, always peaceful, always completely loyal to the king or queen of England, whoever it happened to be. Because at the time of America's leaving, it was King George III. But when they finally left, it was Queen Victoria, and they love Queen Victoria. So in 1867, after all these difficult rebellions, England wasn't the world power it was anymore. Canada just asked nicely, like, hey, we'd like to govern ourselves, as long as they would continue to follow the king or queen, because Canada loves the British monarchy. And so England agreed. It was Queen Victoria who signed their agreement. And they have statues to Queen Victoria and monuments because they love this lady. The lady let them be free. And I think that's cool. Here is some Canadian money for you to look at. this has Queen Elizabeth II, the current Queen of England, on their money. When she dies, they'll replace them with pictures of whoever the new king or queen is. And that's just the thing for them. They've been loyal to the queen forever. And she doesn't visit Canada very often. She visited in the 1980s, but they're always very welcoming and very happy to have her, and they can run themselves in the meantime. So unless the Queen Elizabeth does something that they have to follow, they'll just run themselves. I think that's cool. So Canada has unusual national origins, and because of these unusual origins, people will speak several different languages. In Eastern Canada, like Quebec and Nova Scotia, the people will speak French, since this is the part that France owed, and to this day, they prefer to speak French. But in the West, which was taken over later, the people speak English because it was taken over by the English as they owned England. So it's kind of divided. And if you go far enough north to these little tiny towns, right, just they're on the edge of civilization, you find people that speak all these difficult to find native languages that are often hard to like learn even if you have access to the internet, because they're so local and so specific. So you can go there and you can learn languages that no one else will speak, and that's cool. Like, I mean, it's not as useful as learning something like English or Chinese or French or Spanish, but you can have a language just for you and a few other people, and that's cool too. Since Canada and America are so close, many foods are very similar. You can find a good hamburger in Canada too. America is not special in that regard. You can find American pancakes or Canadian pancakes. They're just pancakes. A lot of these food choices and cultural foods are very similar. But I wanted to talk about two things that are unique to Canada. So in this case, the first one is maple syrup, and the second one are called beaver tails. So here's the beginning of maple syrup. There's a tree native to North America called a maple tree, right? And if you take a pipe and you just jam it in the tree real far, it's going to start like just dripping out sap. So they'll shove these pipes in, and then they will place a bucket beneath the pipe, and the sap will, and it's very sticky. It's like just super sticky, and you pick it up and it kind of sticks to your hands. But it's crazy sweet and delicious, and you can try it out. The main problem is it tastes a bit like tree, and it's like it doesn't really pour nicely. So what they do is they set up these steamers. And what these things are is they're going to boil the impurities out of the sap and make what we call maple syrup. And this is a very simple homemade steamer. It's just containers full of maple syrup and maybe some water over a fire. That's about it. This is very simple. I don't know that you can do this at home, but if you live out in the woods, you can totally do this. And you can see over there on the left are just buckets and buckets of sap being turned into maple syrup. And what you get is this kind of specific like Canadian style maple syrup. It's delicious. And we frequently pour this on pancakes or other things. And this one you can see on the label. This is not in English. This is French. And so this is going to be a product of like the Eastern Canadians, right? Because in the East they speak French. But you can find sometimes there's crossover. In school, Western Canadians learn French and Eastern Canadians learn English, so they can communicate. It's just what they prefer. So even if you go to far Western Canadian areas like Victoria or Vancouver, Ottawa maybe, you'll still find these French like bottles from time to time of different products. And it looks like this when you're using it. These are American pancakes. They are delicious. They're just sweet bread, really. But you pour this like syrup on and it tastes so good. And this is something that you can find very easily in North America, and not many other places have this. So I recommend trying it if you come down. In fact, when I was in high school, or sorry, college, early college, we had a foreign exchange student named Jade, and she was coming from somewhere in like China, like mainland China. I want to say Guangzhou, and she tried these for the first time, and she loved them. So I can't recommend them enough if you come down. The other thing I wanted to talk about are beaver tails, and these are only in Canada because I can find maple syrup here, but beaver tails are from Canada and they're most easily found in Canada. Though there are certain stores that sell them in like Japan, if you know where to look. But these are named after beavers. Yeah, beavers have these like wide tails that like help support them when they're swimming. They and then the beaver swims faster. But yeah, traditional beaver tails are just bread with cinnamon and sugar on top, but they can be made with many different toppings. And here are some that I found. On the left, there's Nutella, which is a type of like kind of chocolate and nut sauce. There's marshmallows and chocolate. There's just chocolate on chocolate on chocolate. A lot of different options for your beaver tail. And this is great. These shops sell a lot of different choices, and sometimes people make their own. It's just a delicious treat that you can have. And so break into groups real fast. So I'll have like a group right here if you could, and yeah, like over here if you guys can be a group, and in the back if you guys could group up, that'd be great. Thank you. And yeah, well, let's talk about beaver tails. So they're thought of as this delicious dessert that people enjoy all over Canada. So I don't want to hear about good beaver tails. Okay, that's that. I mean, those are great. And if you're a cook, I highly, or you enjoy cooking, I say go for it. Make your own beaver tails. But that's not what we're doing today. Today we're going to try and come up with something that nobody in their right mind would buy. Okay, so try and come up with something just ridiculous, and tell us about the toppings, and tell us why this particular set of toppings is going to be unsuccessful. Maybe it's disgusting. Maybe you made a raw fish beaver tail. That sounds nasty. Or it could be too expensive, like you have to shred the gold and put gold upon the beaver tails. It'll be delicious. That's, no one's gonna buy that. Or it's impossible to chew. Like these rocks are delicious. You just rock. Or any number of other reasons. This is up to you and your creativity, and I look forward to hearing it. And I will be around to help all of you with your answers. So I look forward to hearing what you come up with.